Welcome everyone. My name is Thor Rodriguez. I work as an innovation manager for Ateneo AG. And today, me, together with my colleague Tomas, we're gonna be the hosts for the first advanced training session titled Technology Transfer: How to Do it Properly. So for today's program, we have two main blocks that are scheduled, one for the morning for 3 hours, and then we're going to have a 1 hour lunch break, and then we resume for the second block starting at 1 o'clock all the way um, to 4 o'clock, so 4 p.m. I think everybody here is on Central European time, so it's the same time zone for everyone. Going briefly to the speakers, the first talk is going to be done by Sarah, um, entitled B2 Green Hub, TT platform between solution seekers and solution providers. She's going to be followed by Nusa, presenting the user agreement model from the CI Hub project, following by Henrietta, presenting changing mindsets, shifting research culture towards entrepreneurship and innovation. And finally, I'll be presenting linking research and development to innovation strategy. These are the four expected presentations for this morning. Each of them should roughly take more or less 45 minutes. And then we're going to have a 1 hour lunch break between 12 and 1. And then we're going to start block two. Block two is going to be starting by me. I'll be presenting technology transfer services. And then we're going to take, this presentation is aimed to be around 50 minutes. So we can take a 10-minute break. I think that would be good. And then I will resume with my follow-up session regarding best practices in innovation transfer. This should also take more or less 50 to 55 minutes. And then once my presentations are completed, I will give the floor to Maria so she can present innovation starts inside from barriers to breakthrough. So that's the expected program for today. We're happy that everybody's here. And if anyone has any questions, you can say, just type in the chat. I'll be able to read. I'll be able to convey this, the questions that you might have to the speakers. And good. With that being said, I would like to give the floor now to Sarah. So Sarah, it's on you.
Yes, thank you. So I will just begin by sharing my screen and hopefully you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll begin. Okay, so yes, I'm Sarah Vidmar from Pomoria Technology Park, and I will present you the B2 Hub platform today. But before I go to the platform itself, I first have to tell you something about B2 Hub as a whole. So basically, B2 Hub is intended to be, well, is already a wide ecosystem. It's meant as a European innovation hub for digital and green transformation. So why we decided first to do this? PTP has 5 projects on the same 5 European topic projects on the same topic of green and digital, and very similar, let's say, target groups. Among those, we are coordinating 4 of them. So we decided we should do something, let's say, bigger with everything that we have. So we decided to do this ecosystem, a one-stop shop for everything that's green and digital for the European manufacturing companies, as well as the green and digital providers. So as you can see on the slides, the topic here, or let's say our focus areas are sustainability, digitalization, and of course, being more human-centric. Like I mentioned, because 5 projects are developing this platform and the ecosystem, we have many European institutions involved as project partners and associated partners. We have mapped and are currently mapping within different projects various business experts, green experts, digital experts, and solutions to be provided within the hub, as well as other, let's say, supporting stakeholders and institutions. So within this, we also had to decide on which areas we should focus within these 3 main focus areas that I just mentioned, the sustainability, digital, and human-centric. So for green and digital, we decided to, let's say, narrow down for each area 5 specific categories. As you can see on the screen, for example, for green, we cover carbon capture and storage technologies, green and sustainable materials, waste reduction and recycling technologies, and so on. And as for digital, of course, data analytics and artificial intelligence, automation and robotics, cybersecurity and digital trust, and so on. So for our, let's say, providers that will be offering solutions, services, and so on within Vitrine Hub, these are the main focus areas that they will cover. While on the other hand, we have the solution seekers. These are manufacturing companies, right? That come from specific 7 sectors. As you can see, machinery and equipment, metal, food and beverage, plastics and rubber, building materials and furniture, electronics, and pharmaceutical and chemical sectors. So this is what we did. You now, I think, get the picture. We have 2 main target groups. And now I'm going to tell you, well, later I'm going to tell you what we actually want the process, but then to be like. But first, I'm just going to mention the projects. So you can see that we have C-Hub, RISE, Danube DNA, Greenie 4.0, and Reuse Slovenia, Austria. These are 5 core projects that are developing the platform, the whole ecosystem, the logic behind the workings of platform, and contributing the content. So the tools, the trainings, everything that the projects are developing will go to the platform, right, by these projects. But you can already see, of course, as well, that the project IaaS4DR is also listed here, because we were thinking that this project could also contribute with some tools, maybe some trainings, because the topic is slightly, let's say, different, but maybe we can be complementary. And the same goes for the second project I did not mention yet, the Reuse 2030 project, which will also probably contribute with the content to the platform itself. So I did mention before the process on what we actually want to do with this ecosystem and the platform. So I mentioned the 2 target groups. We have providers and seekers. So with the technology solution providers, experts, we are, like I said, mapping everything that they have to offer through all the countries that are participating in the projects. From their expertise, then services, trainings, testing environments, and solutions. And then on the other hand, for the manufacturing companies seeking the services, we have another tool which will be presented by my colleague Nusha later, where we are assessing the company's current status, their needs, barriers, and enablers. And then with the help of the tool, we are actually providing them concrete actions on what they should do to improve a certain process, let's say. And then we get to the next step, which is providing concrete services to actually be able to improve their processes, to make these actions real, right? So this is how we then connect them. The concrete services are those of the providers that we mapped. So this is the, let's say, the merging of the 2, the connecting. But I did not mention the third target group, let's say, which is us facilitators, the project partners, we will be facilitating this entire process, like I said. So working with the manufacturing companies and with the providers, first, let's say, separately, and then connecting them and helping them, supporting them through this process of maybe implementing some of their services, so the provider services to the solution seekers processes. So this is like a main idea. I'm trying to be quick because I want to show you the platform itself as well. I do have everything described here, but I won't bore you with the text for the platform. I'm just going to show you the demo version. Please consider that this is still the demo version. So I was talking about the ecosystem itself, but the vehicle where everything will happen, the one-stop shop, right, is this, what you see on the screen. So we have the platform, which consists of 2 parts. The, let's say, public informational side, the front end that you can see right now, and the back end, which I will get back to later. But just so that I can show you, we see here the landing page. This is what the user first sees when they get to the platform. The showcase providers will be here. the ones that I mentioned that will join the ecosystem, right? Then we have some descriptions that the user knows what's going on here, right? What we are offering, a quick client journey for manufacturing companies seeking services, right? What happens when they join? What are the next steps? And so on. We also have again, the About Us section showing, of course, who we are. This is what I was just talking about. Of course, also showcasing our facilitators, so project partners, right, will be working with companies. And of course, the core projects and the supporting projects, which will still come because we are already discussing collaboration with other projects that we are not actually actively part of as well. We also have an informational slide for service providers and experts. So this just means that we want to present to them also what specifically we are looking for, the areas that they should be covering, right? Like I mentioned at the beginning, what are the benefits for them of joining, and a quick client journey also for them. Just explaining how the process goes. This here is still in development. It's the marketplace, which you can see that we are also, let's say, calling to action all the users that come to the platform. So the marketplace will actually have showcased all of the services, solutions, trainings, and testing infrastructure and equipment that I mentioned before. Um, So users, companies will be able to go through this subpage with all the showcased services. It will be like a catalog, and then be able to choose the one that they wish to, let's say, maybe already implement or learn more about. But if we go to the main menu, this is where most of the, let's say, project results, tools, trainings will be showcased as well. You can see under resources, we have four main categories. First, we have the learn section, where companies and other users, of course, yes, will come to first maybe learn more about green and digital practices, circular economy, and so on, in the form of training videos, a training academy. We already have two projects developing these trainings. And then the next step will be to actually use some tools that can boost maybe the company's sustainability status. So the project's tools, the tools that the projects are developing will be showcased here. I can show you one example of Greenie 4.0, which has been the one project that has the longest duration. That's why we have the most tools already almost developed. So for example, this tool will enable companies to make their own sustainability program. The company will go through 8 modules, will have specific templates that they will be able to use to create their documentation for them to, and in the end, to have an actual sustainability program. This is just one example. Then we, of course, the next step is the connect section. So first, the company learns more about, let's say, the digital and green transition. Then it can use some tools. And then they come to the Connect section, where we will have showcased providers. So like I mentioned, on the marketplace, we will have the offers from these providers. But here, there will be the actual people and companies that are offering these services. Like I maybe already mentioned, we'll have the B2 Hub agents, so us partners, facilitators, digital experts, green experts, and business experts, technology solution providers, so companies providing concrete solutions, and testing environments. We will also have some partner networks showcased, like EDIHs, EEN, and relevant industrial events. I can actually show you just a mock-up, a demo version of this Connect section. We'll also have a map with all the providers here. It's not very much now because these are test inputs, of course. A user will be able to browse by the focus area, green or digital, browse by facilitators, and then, of course, by type of the provider that I just mentioned earlier. And the last part here is the Get Funded section with more information on public and private funding opportunities, as well as the Funding Help Center, which will have specific tools related to the topic of funding. For example, we have within Greenie 4.0 the private equity investment readiness tool, where companies can go through this tool to create their own, let's say, portfolio documentation to become more investment ready. The next part is the solutions, where all the solutions from the providers will be showcased as use cases. Especially, this is important for companies so that they see what's possible, what they could do to get inspired, right? And each solution will be tied to a specific manufacturing process that B2B Hub covers. Next, we have the client section, which is still in development. These will be the pilot action success stories. So from us, B2B Hub partners, so from all projects, we are doing many pilot actions within the project. So this will be the showcasing of those success stories. Another tool developed within Greenie 4.0 is the expert forum, where registered users will be able to post questions and discuss certain topics with the B2B Hub experts. I don't think I have to tell you much about the news and events section. I will mention the project section, of course. This is the 5 core projects that I mentioned that are building the B2B Hub platform. So each will be showcased with the general information of the project and the relevant links. So this was the, let's say, the main front end page, the public side that everyone will be able to see. But like I mentioned, there are 2 parts to the platform. We have the second part now, which is connected to the registered users. Like I said, all the providers, all the solution seekers, partners, so facilitators will register to the platform. And once they do this, they will have access to their own user dashboard, where they'll be able to edit their profiles, the registered profiles that they did, edit account details, passwords. They will also be able to provide us some feedback, report issues. Oh, sorry. Here. Or register a new role. If they, I don't know, a digital expert decides to make a great new solution, he or she will be able to register then as a technology solution provider as well. But then we have another section. This is the last one. So this is the backend, which will only be available to facilitators, so us project partners, as we will be the ones working with both target groups, if I can say this roughly, right? The seekers and the providers. That's why we will have access to a database behind the platform itself. Having access to information of our solution-seeking companies, their very basic needs, because like I said, we will have a bigger overview with the tool that Nusha will present. And of course, we will have access to the everything that the digital experts, the green experts, and so on gave in the registration forms. Of course, we are not counting here the sensitive data because we will have, let's say, limited access to that. But you see that, for example, this is again, I'm sorry, the test input, so it's not a lot of information. But you can see that me as a facilitator, I can see here what this expert John Doe gave as his services, his trainings, his references, which are only academic here, okay? And the same will go for then the green experts, the business experts. I will see information about the solution from a company and the infrastructure equipment providers. So on the maybe some demo centers, test beds, and so on. I will also have access to facilitators only, meaning only project partners. I will be able to browse through the organizations, so our institutions that are involved as project partners, or per project or per country. And I will also be able to see, for example, for Mr. Yanis Novak, his B2B Hub roles. So he's definitely a facilitator, right? But he could be a digital expert, as you can see here. He has one solution. He's an equipment provider. Again, this is just a fake example. But when clicking on his profile, we get to his digital expert profile here. We will also have some tools available in the backend. So these tools will mostly be meant for the facilitators themselves as mentors, with brief descriptions, of course, always the project in which the tool was developed, and but then with the access to the tool, either in the form of documentation or another website, and so on. The same will be for the training with an embedded video if possible. And then I cannot show you yet, but the B2B Hub how-to guide, this will contain basically guidelines, instructions on how to use the platform, the backend, how to register, and so on. Yeah, and that will be actually all from my side. So I'll just finish with, if anyone finds it interesting, if you see any opportunities to collaborate, any complementary, let's say, tools, opportunities, or so on, you can, of course, contact me. You can see my email on the slide. Or, of course, also ask Tiasha, as she is the one responsible, right, for this project, and she will connect you to me and the rest of the team. So thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much for the presentation, Sarah. I found it very interesting. Also, really appreciate your uh, courage for showing not only the front end, but also the back end and the unfinished product. I know this because here in Ateneo, we're also developing a couple software projects, and I'm actually the manager for one of them. And then I know exactly what it feels like. Guys, I want to show everybody what it looks like, but sometimes we still have some boilerplate here. We still have some examples. We also have Dr. John Doe at my company. I think almost all test developers also have Dr. John Doe doing something. And I found it very interesting. It's a very robust tool. I found there's like many different functionalities, quite a complex tool, and I found it very interesting. So thanks so much for the presentation. Would anyone from the audience have any questions? I'm assuming it was very self-explanatory. Great. Now we can move to the next speaker. So now I would like to introduce Nusha. She'll be talking about the user acceptance. Hello. Hi. She'll be talking about the user acceptance model from the CI Hub project. And yes, Nusha, you have the floor.
Of course. Thank you. Can you see my screen now? My presentation?
Yes, we can. You're not in presenter mode though. Yeah, now you are. Great.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Nusha, and I will present today the user acceptance model, or shortly UIM, which was developed in the C-Hub project. As well, I will also present you a little bit about Datamincio, which is supporting the implementation of user acceptance models, and I will show you also later. So I wanted to introduce first myself and the user acceptance model, and then I will tell you something else about Datamincio. And so the user acceptance model, play a crucial role in helping small and medium-sized enterprises successfully adopt green and digital technologies and their sustainability transitions. This is the user acceptance model in a nutshell. So this is the main point of it. As I said, it was developed in C-Hub project, which is a part of Interreg Danube. So why does user acceptance model, why is it important, or why does it matter? Because the development of new technologies is progressing rapidly. Many small and medium enterprises still struggle with adapting these innovations. There are a lot of barriers that come with this, which are lack of awareness, insufficient skills, financial constraints, outdated technologies, and weak institutional support, which often prevent successful transition. The user acceptance model was just created to help overcome these barriers by providing SMEs, policymakers, and support organizations with a structured, human-centered approach. As I said, the goal of C-Hub, user acceptance model, is to foster innovation and competitiveness, particularly in less developed industrial regions across the Danube region. The project was focused on 7 industries, which are electronics, food and beverage, pharmaceuticals and chemicals, metal, plastics and rubber, machinery and equipment, and construction materials. So in user acceptance model, we focus on these 7 industries. The work which went into the user acceptance model included extensive regional analysis, surveys, workshops, and collaborations with different SMEs and experts across all of the 12 Danube regions, which are in the C-Hub project. And the result is the user acceptance model, which in a nutshell, like I said, is a robust model that helps organizations navigate the challenges of digitalization and green transition. Okay, so how the user acceptance model is structured? The user acceptance model is built around 7 main categories, which are first is organizational, managerial, and attitudinal. Second is training and skills development. The third is technological. Fourth, financial. Five, informational and data related. Excuse me. 6, market and business context, and 7th category is governmental support. So it's basically a questionnaire that has categories, different barriers and enablers, KPIs, 46 questions, and answers on the 4th level, which are basic, intermediate, advanced, and pioneer. We add the pioneer later. I will show you and explain you later. And there are also actions for each level, which means the actions are there to tell how to navigate from one level to the next one. So how you grow as a company. And within each of these categories, like I said, we identified specific barriers and enablers. For example, the organizational barriers include lack of awareness or limited human resources, while financial barriers often involve lack of funding and high costs of sustainable investment. And user acceptance models was based on the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology, shortly UTAUT. This model identified 4 key factors. By applying this framework to the realities of SMEs, we were able then to adapt it for green and digital transformation process. This combination of well-established theory with practical business needs ensures that the UIM is both scientifically grounded and business relevant. Yes. This is the example. As I showed you, we have the questionnaire in Excel. So I will tell you more about how it was developed. It was a multi-stage and collaborative process. We began with extensive literature reviews to ensure that we fully understood the theoretical foundations of user acceptance, technology adoption, and sustainable business models. The development process combined both qualitative and quantitative research. A lot of SMEs across the Danube region participated in extensive surveys and interviews, sharing their experience, challenges, and motivation for the future. Then data was collected from industry, like I said, from 7 sectors. These businesses represented different stages of digital maturity, different market contexts, and varying levels of experience with sustainability. And then we also conducted in-depth regional analysis to capture local variations, which are very important. This country-specific perspective were essential since each region in the Danube region area faces its own challenges and opportunities depending on regulatory frameworks, market pressures, and financial systems. And then, even to ensure practical relevance, there was organization of co-creation workshops with multiple stakeholders, which were SMEs, policymaker, industry experts, research institution, and business support organization. So a lot went into creating and making this questionnaire. It's not just random questions, it's really thoroughly, shall I say, developed. Then we got the feedback, and through this approach, collaborative approach, we ensure that the user acceptance models, it's not just a theoretical model, but a practical tool designed for the realities which SMEs face on the ground. So then with this extensive methodology, we identified some barriers and enablers, and the most important, or shall I say most common barriers that SMEs included were a lack of awareness of sustainability benefits, shortage of skilled labor, high costs and limited financial resources, outdated technologies, and insufficient government support. Then the most important enablers that promote acceptance include strong managerial support, knowledge networks and training programs, government financial incentives, access to clear, actionable information, and market pressures from clients and supply chains demanding sustainable practices. And then for the most important KPIs, it was management and employee engagement, workforce skills and training participation, financial readiness and ROE of green investments, technology adoption rates, and customer awareness and market competitiveness. So I can show you a little bit of UIM. I have it here in Excel, but just keep in mind we later, under scoring, we later added the fourth level, but I don't have the document because we implemented it directly into Datamensio. So you can see the first is category. We have here organizational, managerial and attitudinal. Then we have an enabler or barrier. Like I said, the most important identified ones. Then we have KPIs. Each question has its own KPI, if you can see. Then we have a question, which is the most important, and then the scoring. Here are three levels. As I said, the fourth level is pioneer. First, we have a basic, then intermediate, advanced. Each one has descriptions, so the company easier decides where it falls. And then here we have actions on the most right side, which means how you can go from basic to intermediate or from intermediate to advanced or to advanced and pioneer. The level pioneer doesn't have any options since it's the highest level and there's no more evolving, shall I say. So this is how it looks. This is the basic look of the questionnaire. There are different industries and sectors. Okay. So it's a questionnaire in Excel. Here, another example. So now I will go to the role of data mention. Excuse me. Okay, so what is Datamensio? This is a digital platform that we in all the project partners decided that we will use, and it brings user acceptance models into practice. Datamensio helps organizations manage complex transformation projects, and especially in the areas of sustainability, digitalization, and strategy execution. And it's easier for us to track progress for companies. And it looks a little bit more polished when we send them the questionnaire through Datamensio. They have KPI tracking and reporting, AI-powered recommendation to support decision-making, cross-team collaboration tools, a ready-made template for sustainability, compliance and innovation, and customizable roadmaps for green and digital maturity. It actually saves a lot of data, and you can track your progress more closely, and you can see where you fall with your competition, where you can improve mostly. So it's just a very practical tool. So I wanted to present it today because now we use it also on other projects and it's very helpful. And the process with Datamensio is very dynamic, allowing continuous monitoring and updates as the company progresses. The company can revisit the model regularly, measure improvements, and adapt its strategy accordingly. And one more important, so here is Datamensio. I'm sorry, I'm out of Datamensio locked because we have too many users, so I'm waiting for new emails. So I can show you on the website, but I did a screenshot for you, so you can see. The category is for example, lack of human resources. Here's the question. And here are the answers. As you see, we added the pioneer here. And when you fill out the questionnaire at the end, you have the actions and how to improve to the next level. And if I go back to user acceptance model, one important principle of the user acceptance models is to focus on the human element. Technology adoption is not only about tools and some systems, but also about people, their awareness, skills, attitudes, and behaviors. Organizational culture, leadership engagement, and employee buy-in are often the deciding factors for successful transitions for companies to green and digital. And the user acceptance model emphasizes the need for companies to create a supportive environment where continuous learning, cross-functional collaboration, and open communication become part of everyday business practices. So if I sum up, the user acceptance model offers small and medium enterprises a comprehensive, structured approach to overcome the many challenges, excuse me, of green and digital transition. It allows companies to analyze their current state, set actionable goals, monitor progress, and continuously adapt for the future. So through collaborations, training, financial support, we can significantly increase the adoption of sustainable and digital practices across European SMEs. By doing so, we are not only supporting business competitiveness, but also contributing to a greener and more resilient European economy. So thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Nusha.
Sorry.
Yes.
If anyone has a question, then ask.
Hi there.
Thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed that. I think it's a great model that you have here. Can you remind me what were the industries, the 7 industries? Because you were brushing over it very fast, and I didn't get to catch up so much.
The 7 sectors are electronics, food and beverage, pharmaceuticals and chemicals, metal, plastics and rubber, machinery and equipment, and construction materials. Do you have all of them now?
That's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Any more questions? I must give you a hint that you're sharing your screen. No, Nusha, we can still see your screen.
Oh, excuse me.
It's all good. Happens to all of us. Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a somehow related, a bit relatable story that one of the first projects that I actually had to do when I started working as an innovation manager was I was actually in charge of a full university, not one, but 2 university assessments. And I know it's like to happen to come up with the whole survey, and then you really have to think about your research questions, how you're going to frame what you want to say, the different options that users have, and then how afterwards you collect all the data and analyze it. So I really appreciate well-made KPIs. The system that you show seems very well structured. I find that very. You can definitely see that a lot of thought went into building that. So I found it very interesting. So once again, thanks a lot for your presentation. Now we're gonna move on with Henrietta. So Henrietta will be presenting changing mindsets, shifting research culture towards entrepreneurship and innovation. Henrietta, you have the floor.
Hi there. Let me just try and make sure. Okay. Can we see my slides?
Yes.
Well, Brilliant. So, very good morning or good day to all of you, and greetings from the sunny Košice from Slovakia. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be in this very interesting lineup of presenters at today's session. As you just mentioned, we are going to talk about how we can change and shift the mindset of researchers towards a more entrepreneurial thinking and to make sure we can enhance innovation. Just a second, I'll leave this out. Right, so I would like to start, if my slides will actually move. See? There we go. Oh, it's working. So I'd like to start by acknowledging a fundamental issue, which is the innovation gap. Every year, countless hours of high-quality research are published, yet only a relatively small portion of this research is resulting in some direct societal benefit or in the creation of commercial ventures or scalable innovations. Now, we may wonder, is this because of lack of talent or lack of ideas from the researchers? Well, actually, it's not. This disconnect is really about a lack of system that supports translation and application. So let's have a look. What are the key aspects behind this innovation gap? Many scientific breakthroughs never reach the market due to the challenges in translating the basic research into viable products. Sometimes we describe this as a valley of death, which is kind of the stage between really early stage discovery and the development of a market-ready solution. Another aspect is the technology readiness level. The basic research is often conducted at those low technology TRLs, like if I can use the abbreviation, where the concepts are still being tested, validated. Moving to higher TRLs, where technologies are actually prototyped, tested in a real commercial environment and scaled, requires often different skills, resources, which are not necessarily always present in academic or early stage research setting. Funding can be also an aspect of this innovation gap. Basic research is commonly funded by governments, as we know, and institutions. This can be a case of translation or applied funding as well, but in many cases, this tends to be funded from different sources or is a lot more limited, especially when we go to private funding. There is also always a bit more kind of higher awareness to risk when validating some concept that might be years away from commercialization. Cultural differences. Academia often values the publication and knowledge dissemination, while industry focuses on IP, speed to market, return on investment. And these different incentives and priorities can often lead to a lack of collaboration or, in some cases, to misalignment of goals. Also, researchers don't always have the experience in entrepreneurship. They lack the experience in business development, regulatory strategy, product market fit. And this is where that entrepreneurial thinking comes in the picture, because it offers a real structured way to bridge this gap. It encourages researchers to look behind or beyond that publishing and think about value creation, user needs, scalable impact. And especially, we live in a very interesting world where we face real global challenges like climate change, public health crisis, economic inequality. So the need for applied or translational research, I believe, has never been more urgent and important. And that's why today we'll try and explore how shifting the mindset of researchers, reducing barriers and supporting researchers and how we can support them in becoming agents of innovation. So before we try and change their mindset and shift them, I think as a good startup as well, we need to really understand their current way of thinking. I think it's fair to say that researchers are trained to be methodical, skeptical, data-driven, and their strength lies in diving deep into some complex problems and validating these concepts with rigor. And this behavior is absolutely essential in their progress, in their scientific progress, but it can sometimes kind of limit their ability to act quickly or embrace uncertainty or pivot based on market changes or market signals. Now, it's really important that we recognize these differences in the first step if you are trying to change their mindset. But does that mean that they don't have any transferable skills? Jumping, yes. And when we actually look at some of these skills, many of these core skills that researchers use every day map directly into the entrepreneurial activities. We just need to help them to kind of shift slightly the way they think. So, for example, researchers mentioned they are trained to think critically and solve complex problems. This is really a valuable skill in any setting. It's really essential in industry when it's important to be able to make informed decisions based on data. Analytical thinking also supports market research and performance metrics, which are absolutely essential in industry. The researchers often actually don't realize that they do own these skill sets, and they are actually entrepreneurial already in some way. We just need to kind of show them where those skills and how they can be used in an entrepreneurial setting. Because if you look at what they do when they start a project, they have to design, conduct, and analyze research in order to develop new knowledge and understanding. And they can actually draw up really strong conclusions supported by evidence. They also have good communication skills because they often have to present at very prestigious conferences and communicate their research in a variety of formats to different audiences. Their communication skills are actually highly developed. Where we can actually help them is to make sure that they communicate their research in a way that can be understood by industry. Problem solving, again, they are really good at problem solving, and in industry or in businesses, this can help identify the pain points in the market. So again, we just need to show them how they can utilize this skill in a commercial area. And again, the grant writing experience is also valuable when they are applying for funding from various sources. Collaboration, a lot of research projects actually involve a number of consortia partners. So they are already actually used to or have learned to work jointly with other partners, and they can work as a team. And they also have some time management skills because through these collaborations, they always have to kind of meet some deadlines and produce some outputs. So there are actually a lot of transferable skills, but we just need to help them explain it and show how they can utilize in a commercial environment. What are some of the barriers to entrepreneurial thinking? Well, academia is not academic environments, not always designed with entrepreneurship in mind. If I look at here in our structure as well, the reward structures are more to favor publications, citations, rather than prototypes and partnerships. There's also a persistent myth that profit-driven ventures, commercial businesses are incompatible with academic integrity. We also hear that from businesses as well, that academia and business don't work on the same scales. Again, there might be some differences, but if we help both parties understood the priorities and align them, this can be certainly addressed. So I think as long as we address these barriers head on at the beginning, and this can be done by policies, funding, cultural reinforcement, we can actually help researchers feel a lot more confident stepping into the entrepreneurial roles. The entrepreneurial mindset isn't about turning every idea into a business. So we're not trying to say that every researcher now needs to create a new business or a new idea. What we are trying to help them change is the perception and the proactive opportunity recognition. So we want them to help to recognize opportunities and act on them creatively. So this means testing assumptions, learning from feedback, and building solutions that people actually want. These principles can be taught and practiced even in heavy, research-heavy environments. And one thing perhaps we can sort of help them more is to try and teach them to embrace that uncertainty and failure as a learning tool, because this is often kind of unfamiliar for them. Now we are going to look at bridging, how we can bridge, or what are the support mechanisms to bridge this innovation gap, and what are the support mechanisms that can help shift those researchers' mindset. Bridging the innovation gap is not just a matter of having a better technology. It's about aligning incentives, resources, and capabilities across academia, industry, and government. And if you address this gap, we can actually accelerate that path from idea to impact, turning scientific potential into societal progress. So I'm sure there are a lot more support mechanisms that I kind of listed here, but I'm going to briefly talk about these support mechanisms. I think within the next presentation, some of these structures will be explored in a lot more detail. But at least I'll touch on some of these areas and how they can help shifting the researcher's mindset. So let's start with looking at the role of tech transfer offices. Most universities have a tech transfer office or an arm or a commercialization manager of some kind. These structures play a vital role in fostering entrepreneurship and can really help to diffuse that entrepreneurial culture or research, encouraging the dissemination of research outcomes and support scientists through the various stages of commercialization. They can offer help. They can carry out that initial due diligence on the intellectual property. They can help with the protection of the intellectual property, or just simply provide advice in different areas such as business creation or more. The university commercialization department will always have an IP policy which sets out the rules of the ownership of the intellectual property and how this is managed. And I'm sure my colleague will touch on this later, but also having been in a number of projects where we looked at the potential of creating spin-outs and what are the barriers. I think this is so essential that this IP policy is clear and transparent and really helps researchers understand how can they get involved in commercialization, what does it actually mean to their day-to-day life, their day-to-day work. And another thing that I kind of really liked within a research project as well is the flexibility in which researchers can get involved, whether it's in a new spin-out company or just being part of it, because not everybody will necessarily want to become an entrepreneur, but that doesn't mean that they can't be part of the entrepreneurial journey and be part of a startup and still stay as a researcher. So there's a lot of good practices showing how giving flexible structures for researchers to be involved can really help and help both the companies and both the researchers. Then we are going to look at business or startup incubators. As support structures, universities that operate their own business incubators are usually really well placed to support researchers who are working on commercially promising research and help them transport the ideas from the lab into the marketplace. Sometimes this results also in contribution to creating a spin-out or a spin-off, but this is also about creating an environment, nurturing environment where students can create their own and grow their own startups. And this comes usually in a form of like support programs, which again are listed. There are a few areas like workshops, funding, expertise, and the great thing about university-based incubators that they can provide not just the business but the technical expertise, also some test facilities, mentoring a key element of this incubator support because that really can help these teams or researchers move their ideas forward. They often provide office space and access to networking events, and very importantly, support with investment readiness is access to finance, because none of the kind of a good business or a great startup ideas can move forward without essential funding. I also wanted to quickly have a look at some of the online tools that are available, and often these incubators teach and help use the researchers. They can be downloadable, and there are a lot of kind of demos on YouTube as well, which researchers can look up, such as the business model canvas, the value proposition canvas, and it really can help them understand how they're potentially, the research they are working for, it could become a business idea or has some commercial potential. Next support mechanism, and I think this is a really, really interesting one, the public-private partnerships. I will refer to them as PPPs to shorten version, but they are a really powerful tool for shifting researchers' mindset towards commercial thinking by embedding real-world problems, industry expectations, and market incentives directly into the research process. So how does it work? These are structured collaborations between public sector entities such as universities, government agencies, or national labs, and between private stakeholders such as commercial businesses, startups. And the goal is to jointly fund, guide, and implement research and innovation projects that address societal needs or commercial opportunities. And how does it actually help changing the mindset? Well, in traditional academic research, problems are often self-defined and driven by curiosity or theoretical gaps, whereas PPPs flip this by anchoring research around actual pain points, industry pain points, regulatory challenges, customer needs, or commercial gaps. This means that researchers start to view their work through a solution-oriented lens and perhaps start asking questions like, who will use this? What problem does it solve? How will it be deployed? This customer-centric framing really introduces that market awareness early in the research project. Funding, co-funding, and shared risk. In PPPs, funding often comes from both public sources and private investment from companies. And what it means is that research must meet both scientific rigor and practical feasibility. Outcomes are expected to be usable, scalable, and potentially profitable. So again, when we look at the researcher's mindset, what it means is they are exposed to cost and benefit thinking, timelines, and milestones similar to those in industry. And this introduces a more entrepreneurial approach to the R&D work. Again, PPPs usually involve a joint project team with researchers and company engineers, product managers, advisory boards maybe, and there are regular reviews or check-ins from the commercial stakeholders. And what it means is this builds kind of a familiarity with commercial vocabulary, priorities. So it's a teamwork, and they actually get exposed to that industry community as well, and helps them in the translation process from lab to product. It encourages them to be more collaborative, iterative, rather than just isolated and publish and forget the research. Many PPPs are also designed to facilitate real-world pilots, demonstration projects, or industry adoptions. So if you look at it from a practical point of view, then let's say a public health researcher working with a pharma company on a drug delivery, or a clean tech team partnering with a utility to trial a new energy system. And that means it creates a clear line of sight of impact. So it's not just doing research, but there is at the end of it some impact that will be visible. It helps them actually think beyond, again, from the lab bench or academic journal. PPPs will also require some IP agreements, because it's both between a private and public entity. There will have to be clear lines, and I think it also will help researchers to see how the IP arrangements and agreements are negotiated, and how the IP and the commercialization process will happen. And it will help them think about the ownership, but also about the monetization of their work. And finally, the career incentives and visibility. Success in a private-public partnership, such as a product being piloted or licensed, can lead to a career advancement in applied or translational fields. They attract industry collaborators or future funding as well, because it shows that this team, this researcher, can actually produce real impact. Offers also paths towards more entrepreneurship or joint ventures, and means that researchers begin to see commercial engagement as a valid and valuable career path, not a deviation from pure science. And if you want to actually show it in a little table, how it kind of switches their mindset from curiosity driven to problem and end user, from publishing for recognition to deliver impact and usability, using academic timelines. There are milestones and outcome-driven milestones. Individual projects become cross-sector collaborations, and instead of just focusing on novelty, there needs to be a balance with feasibility and application. So again, in a summary with this point, they don't just fund innovation, these partnerships, they shape how researchers think about innovation. Another support mechanism, which comes again in the form of innovation clusters, can be a real powerful role in shifting researchers' mindset towards commercial thinking. And what it means is that they actually get immersed in an environment where entrepreneurship, industry collaboration, and real-world impact are part of the daily fabric. So what are the kind of actual key points that help change their mindsets? First of it is the proximity to industry and entrepreneurs. In innovation clusters, researchers are constantly surrounded by startups, scale-ups, corporates, R&Ds, and sometimes venture capitalists and angel investors as well, who are scouting for promising innovations. This proximity makes that commercialization feel a bit more tangible and immediate. They regularly encounter some of their peers who successfully spun out a company or transitioned into entrepreneurial roles, or making an idea into business. So it's not as abstract, it's a bit more tangible and attainable. Cross-pollination and interdisciplinary collaboration. Clusters are often seen as the collision zones where researchers interact with product designers, software developers, legal experts, investors, and business strategies. This fosters a more holistic view of innovation, not just as a scientific breakthrough, but as a multidisciplinary process, which requires diverse skills. So again, researchers start to think beyond publishing papers, considering how to solve real problems with actual users in mind. And science parks or innovation clusters often have a university-linked incubator or accelerator, which includes business mentors or mentorship programs, workshops, courses on topics like lean startup methodology, regulatory pathways, venture fundraising. So again, these resources can help researchers demystify the commercialization and provide them with a basic toolkit and confidence to begin thinking in terms of value creation, customer needs, and market readiness. And just like in any other cases, the role models, having role models and great example success stories can have a real impact or power in their thinking. When a postdoc sees their colleague raise funding, be really successful and build a startup and license the technology to industry, it kind of makes normalize this as commercial pathway. It provides some concrete example of success, establishes some peer benchmarks beyond the traditional academic recognition. And access to market intelligence within those clusters is really important as well, because these clusters often have networking events, pitching events, demo days, industry meetups, and researchers began to frame their projects more with a question of, who would use this? What's the pathway to scale? What's the competitive landscape? So they get access to some market-aware thinking, which is key to aligning their research goals with commercial potential. In strong clusters, universities and research institutions are often actively promoting commercialization through performance metrics, which include patents, licenses, spin-outs. There are also established startup leave policies and equity sharing arrangements, seed funding competitions, or even entrepreneurial sabbaticals. So again, researchers in this cluster environment feel that commercial thinking is actually valued, not a peripheral or frowned upon. Leading to deeper engagement with the innovation ecosystem. And another kind of mechanism that I'd like to mention is the translational research programs. They often described as bench to bedside or lab to market. They focus on taking the early stage scientific discovery and advancing them towards practical use. It does not stop at discovery. It pushes for validation, prototyping, and regulatory planning. So similarly, like we mentioned with the public-private partnerships, they have a number of benefits in terms of having structured milestones and accountability. Researchers work in multidisciplinary teams. They actually look at the regulatory and market realities that the research has to match. And it also has an institutional and cultural support because they are working together in a joint environment with industry. So again, I'll try and show an example of it afterwards, but what it really means for the researchers, they feel that the applied work is respected, not a lesser path, and research programs don't just provide the funding, they provide a framework, a community, a set of expectations that reshape how researchers approach their work. For the second part of my presentation, I'm actually going to give you some brief examples that I pulled out from my career and my experience, and hopefully that kind of puts the theoretical part of my presentation in context as well. So one example of an innovation cluster that I'd like to highlight is the Harvard Science and Innovation Campus, which I had a privilege and an honor to work in for 5 years. It is a 700-acre science and technology campus just outside Oxford. There are over 7,000 people working in the campus in over 240 public and private sector organizations. And they are working across sectors including space, clean energy, life sciences, and quantum computing. They actually have a collective goal to make this park the world's largest and most important location for scientific research, technology development, and commercializations. Again, as I mentioned previously, we do face a lot of big challenges, and the Harvard Science Park is very keen to make sure that they are focusing on the challenges that of the future, which includes also the impact of aging, growing population, climate change, and sustainability. There's a very strong space cluster, which I was part of. So they do a lot of space exploration and satellite communication technologies, and they also link it with energy technology and storage. And the great thing is when you see that how sometimes these different sectors, when you bring the communities together, find some joint or collaborative areas and develop joint projects. So they really represent a crossroad where public, private, and academic, commercial organizations meet and work together to address these global challenges. There is a big focus on access to research facilities. Again, this comes through a really strong investment from the UK government, and over 30 university teams from across the world are at any time on this campus using the facilities working together. So the cross-sector collaboration combined with the cross-fertilization of talent, ideas, solutions are the core of their open and collaborative environment. We'd love to see some of these here in Slovakia as well in the future, because the impact and the, as I mentioned, that collision zone, the benefit from having these people, these facilities, and these expertise in one place is a really, really powerful mechanism. And having researchers based in these environments can have a real shift in their thinking. I also pulled out one of the programs that supports the knowledge transfer. And this program has been running for years under the flagship of Innovate UK, the government's innovation agency. It's called a Knowledge Transfer Partnership. And it's all about embedding knowledge and expertise and solving strategic problems that create transformational changes. What I'll probably, because I'm just conscious of time, just mention that how it actually works. I'll jump here. It's a unique freeway project. The team is formed from the knowledge base, a business, and a graduate or an associate, which again can we see as a researcher. And this associate is usually a highly skilled, suitable, qualified graduate, acts as a project manager and conduit for a change. And the majority of these stay on to become full-time employees actually within the business. The program is co-funded by Innovate UK and the company partners. You can see the contributions as well. They are different from small and large organizations. Another element in this program is the knowledge transfer advisor. Again, he's the one who finds the right academic expertise for the business, who is trying to solve a key challenge in their future. He is the one who plans out a fundable project, steers the partnership over the time. And again, as the third partner, it's the academics, so the university. And in the next couple of slides, I just quickly click through about the benefits and show that how everybody can really benefit from such a partnership. So what does it mean for the business having such a partnership where they get this associate or graduate works on a specific challenge in their business for a year? For the business, it helps to embed the expertise, to generate new knowledge and expand the capability and drive a competitive advantage through the accelerated innovation and the possibility of creating some intellectual property as well. They get access to a world-class knowledge base and resource, which comes from the university. And they can actually, as a result of the increased revenue profits through access to new markets, new product development, and they have better productivity and better processes. So again, a real benefit from strategic input of a highly experienced knowledge transfer advisor. If you look at that actual associate, for them, it's a real great career kick. And around the stats show that around 60% of these KTP associates are offered a permanent job in the company. They get industry-based training for recent graduates and enhance their specialist and business skills. And these roles come with a substantial training budget as well, mentoring and coaching from the expert knowledge transfer advisors. And for sorry, I think I jumped the slide. There we go. That's the associate, and I think I skipped it. Oops, business. I've got associate. There we go. And the next slide. So a summary or a conclusion. Through our presentation, we looked at how researchers work. And got an understanding of their mindset. We established that they actually do have a lot of transferable skills that can work in entrepreneurial environment. What we have to help them is overcome these barriers that we talked about earlier. And once we've created the awareness, researchers actually might be interested in commercializing the idea, but often don't know where to start. So we've shown that some of the support mechanisms and structures where they can get help to get involved in entrepreneurial thinking. But the clear kind of highlights for me is how to embed that entrepreneurial thinking is to make sure that they have clear commercialization pathways so they understand the so-called customer journey. These are simple, accessible guides and support. And if anybody's interested, if you look at the Oxford Innovation, which is the Oxford University's Tech Transfer Office, they have a really nice example of a guidebook for researchers, including how they declare their research if they are interested in the process. And also Imperial College is a really lovely downloadable version of how to get involved in being an entrepreneur. entrepreneur or look at the commercial potential of your business. Again, so if you provide these researchers the right training on IP, pitching, on some of the lean startup methodologies, they can help join the startup or entrepreneurial journey. The institutional policies are key to encourage. We must have institutional policies that encourage rather than hinder. So they have to be designed to support researchers to want to be involved in this rather than making it difficult for them. There are a lot of programs that can help that entrepreneurship be right on the doorstep. So entrepreneurial residence program, mentorships program, have a curriculum and workshops on innovation for researchers. And it's really important that we celebrate the entrepreneurial role models in academia, so they actually see it as a nice thing. It's not just being an academic, but also an entrepreneur. But so the really important and the note I would like to finish on is that we need to embed that innovation in the institution's identity, not to treat it as a fringe activity. Thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer these.
That was great. Thank you so much, Henrietta. I really appreciate the presentation. I think you did a great job of condensing all these different strategies together. Here at Trineo, I think we have, to some degree, some good experience with all these, at least the 5 main strategies that you mentioned, from technology transfer, innovation clusters, startups, accelerators, public-private partnerships. And I think you did a very good job of condensing all of these in a very straightforward, like in a time constrained manner, which is often a difficult task. I also really enjoy seeing the Harwell technology center slide. I don't know why I always like to see, oh, they have a particle accelerator. I think those are super cool. I think Germany already has a good amount, but there we can definitely do more. Where one of our best clients actually is Daisy, the Deutsche Elektronsynchron, and they are one of the big research centers. Then they're now building their latest particle accelerator in Hamburg. They're building the Petrosphere. If I remember correctly, the budget for that is 1.5 billion euros, which is quite a good amount of money to build like a nice scientific toy. Just by when you showed the slide, I saw that there was a figure saying that the technology part costs 3 billion, and just by seeing that figure, it's like, they need to have a particle accelerator, which I think is super cool. But you can also just see in the corner the image, like, oh yeah, obviously either that's a football stadium or a very fancy
accelerator. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no other option. So I found that was very good. Thank you so much for the presentation. Anyone from the audience would like to make any remarks? I guess not. Okay. So now I can start preparing my presentation. What time is it? 10:20. Okay, and I need to share my screen. So share this. Okay, I want to be in presentation mode. Just this. And then I also have to set up so I can see you guys. Okay, this is properly adjusted. So is it possible to see my screen in presenter mode? And yet can give me some feedback. Great, perfect. Okay, great. So hi everyone. My name is, I'm gonna present myself again, but I'm Thor Rodriguez. I am innovation manager for Ateneo AG. Ateneo AG, just a quick introduction. We are a consulting company specialized in knowledge technology transfer. We mostly work together with different research institutes and universities in Germany, not only in Germany, but mostly in Europe. We also participate in many different European projects, like this one, for example. And I would like to first I'd like to quickly talk about what I do at my work as an innovation manager. So we do a lot of different things. At least my main attributions now are, actually, I'm also into software development. So now today we're developing a couple AI-powered tools for assisting TTOs and other professionals in patent analysis and application analysis. So that's something that we traditionally have a lot of experience with it. The company itself is doing this for over 10 years. And we have over 100 clients just in the whole area of patent and knowledge transfer and all this initial research. And then we just realized that we can actually build a tool that assists the other TTO officers to work in these areas. And I'm the project manager for this project. The current working title is Strive Patents, but will likely change at some point. Another thing that I do is that before I used to work a lot on innovation transfer. So I work on 2 different big EU consortiums already, and I did a lot of direct transfer cases. So I used to work directly with clients from different universities. They provide us with their patents or innovation, publication, and research. And then my job was to figure out their whole commercialization strategy for whatever they developed. And even before that, when I actually really started, I was just doing supporting activities for my other colleagues, and they involve a lot of different analysis and assessments. So I used to do a lot of, like I said, patent assessments. I did commercialization roadmaps. I did application assessments, market assessments, all these different types of support activities. And good. With that being said, I wanted to give a brief overview of the at least the contents of my first session. So it's first session linking research and development to innovation strategy. I divided into 3 main categories. The first one, I'm going to talk about the origins of good ideas. So, where do actually good ideas come from? It sounds like a very obvious thing of, oh, it just comes from a brain, but it's a little bit more than that. Then I'm going to talk about identifying transfer objects. So transfer objects are pretty much something that is somehow produced or that is attached to a new innovation producing center that we can actually identify. Often different institutions, they create a lot of things and they often don't perceive that they have something value in their own hands, and that ends up being untapped potential. That's the core focus of session 2 about the identifying the transfer objects. And then finally, I'm going to talk about different ways that you can actually access the potential for transfer of the transfer objects that one have identified. So that is the brief overview of what I'm supposed to have for this session. So first, okay, so normally this is an interactive session that we do with different universities, but not for this particular session. But often we'll start by asking the participants where the good ideas actually come from. And it sounds like people often come up with it's obvious of, oh, it's somewhere in your brain, you have a good idea and there you have it, but it's often quite more nuanced than that. And then this is the part where we would ask the different participants to write something on a piece of paper or on some digital platform, and they give us the input. And these are some of the most common answers that we actually receive. And if you really think about it, they're all technically correct. I'm just going to go to them super quick. So a lot of people say, oh, good ideas come from curiosity. People, they're just curious. They just ask why for no reason, like why these things are the way they are. I want to know more. Others often answer that, oh, some individuals are ambitious. They're like, I want to have a great idea, so maybe I can profit off that, or I can increase my reputation. That would be great. Others say it's about intentional research, so I'm just researching something because I am the researcher in this area, and then at some point I come up with something new. Other times say, oh, it's actually more like a side result, so I was trying to develop something ideally, and then just through side tracking, end up coming up with the idea that, oh, this thing works really well. It's like a side result. Some people say economic interest. So my organization or my institution, we have a certain economic interest. We want to better develop our prospects here. So that's what we're going for. Some people say it's just out of brainstorming. You come up with a bunch of people and you think for a specific topic, and then you just write things down and make jolt notes. And then at some point you come up with something interesting. Others will say it's a problem solving thing. So you have your specific problem, and then you just think more or less about how you're going to solve it. Others about constraints and limitations. You have your challenge, but you're very limited to the specific set of tools or capabilities you have. So you have to come up with new creative solutions to overcome that. Others say that good ideas come out of collaboration. So you just talk to different people, you exchange ideas, and then you come up, oh, we actually have some synergies here that we can build new things that weren't built before. Experimentation, iteration. So once again, you try to do something, fails, then try again, fails, and then every single step you improve a little bit your process or your product that you're developing, and then you come up with aha moment, and then you have a good idea. Sometimes it just comes in the shower, like you're a random association, you're showering, you're just walking your dog, and then you realize, oh, never thought about this, and then you have a good idea. Mistakes or failures can also be great sources of good ideas. So when you know what doesn't work, it's easier to figure out what's going to work at the end. So that's a good point. Unexpected observation. So once again, it's very similar to random observation. So you're working on a side project, and then you notice, oh, something here seems off, and then the more you delve into it, you come up with a good idea out of it. Exposure to new experiences. So once again, the individual is like, um, I never thought about this different way. You got exposed to a new scenario, a new circumstance. You go to different talk. People from different topic introduce you to something, and then you can draw some conclusions out of the topic. You can incorporate your own ideas. Observation, which is just, oh, I've been thinking a lot about this, and then at some point it came out with, oh, this seems to actually work. And then finally, people also often say questioning assumptions. So you have an assumption of, this is how we do this because of these reasons, and then you just look and say, I think this is kind of wrong. It's often different answers that people give to the question of where good ideas come from. They're all, if you really think about it, they're all valid, but we like structuring things. So normally we categorize these things into 5 major groups. The 5 major groups would be research and development activities. So you're intentionally looking for a specific development. Industry and market experience. So pretty much it's already you've been initiated to something, and then you further develop into that. Societal and global challenges, so something new came up. Personal frustrations and hobbies, and finally accidental discoveries. So just to do a quick recap, the idea behind research and development activities is you're part of an institution or you're part of a specific project, and then you're directly working to solve this specific problem that you're presenting for, just like an intentional advancements that you're making. That's just, I guess, the most straightforward answer of like, I just thought about working on something specific and then I started developing it. It's a very intentional, it's very direct. But then you also have the non-very direct approaches to good ideas. So industry and market experience is also a very good one of those. So you usually have a professional, you're working a specific market, a specific segment, and then at some point you realize, look, I've been doing this, and I realized you have many different opportunities to improve a specific process or a specific product. I see there are a knowledge or market gap here. This seems to be an unattended market that I can tack on. The third major category would be massive, almost kind of trendy societal and global challenges. So in the last 20 years, I would say that the emergence and the importance of climate sustainability has been growing a lot. People realize that climate has been changed through man-made action, and then people want to step up and take actions that they want to enact changes. So that's like a recent trend that came up. Different global challenges can include, for example, digitalization. Now we live in an age that many of our most important processes or workflows or daily activities, they go through many of these digital tools, digital workflows. And then you have this a great challenge of how you're going to balance data privacy with usability features. Many of these solutions that we use, they're built by massive companies that might not always have our best interest privacy-wise. They might be more profit-oriented. They might be able to do things that can further improve their own agenda at the cost of our own data, our own safety, our own privacy. So as things change, often you have these so-called societal and global challenges, the new trends, new issues that arise, and then we have to adapt and come up with potential solutions to these problems. Fourth point would be about the personal frustrations and hobbies. So often you just frustrated about one thing that impacts you directly. There's a problem that bothers you a lot. You want to come up with a solution for yourself, and then you realize, oh, this solution can also be applied to other people. And sometimes people just come out of good ideas out of hobby. So there's something they have a passion for. They like software programming or building small smart toys or something, and then I realize, oh, this other people are interested in what I'm doing, and I can actually transfer this to other people. This is a good source of good ideas. And then finally, accidental discovery. So sometimes people just work on something and they, by accident, they come out with something good. And I don't enjoy spending much in the realm of abstraction. So for each one of these, I have an example that really helps to solidify knowledge. So regarding the idea of research and development activities, so intentionally looking for a new solution. A great example is example of the development of the MP3 file format. So the MP3 file format was developed by the Fraunhofer Institute, which is a research institute in Germany. And then they started their development activities in the 1980s. And the core idea behind it was that it was actually an intersection between data processing and figured out new ways to codify information in a small format, and also psychoacoustics. So the idea that researchers at the time were studying how humans perceive different audio, different sound waves, and then they came to the conclusion that actually, even though our human ears we have a very wide range, can hear from 20 all the way to 2000 hertz in frequency, people realize that not all of these sounds are meaningful. So many of these sounds that can just be removed. You don't really need to perceive them. And if you remove these frequencies, it doesn't really impact your perception, your experience, your enjoyment of a specific song. It just remains the same. And that was good because now you can have a specific file type, and then you can remove certain parts of it, and it just make the file type smaller, and the audio joining experience still remains the same, which is great. Back in the 80s, I wasn't there back in the 80s, but back in the 80s, the idea of actually having to store things digitally was a big issue. Back then, you already had the proto hard drives, but it was just not feasible to have a massive player, digital player, that can only hold like one album of the music thing songs, because cost of storage was just super high. You didn't have the actual devices. So one of the great breakthroughs that MP3, and I would say the MP3 was actually the technology that allowed for, we started having a massive push towards music, digital, portable music devices, was that now you have a very efficient compact format that you can actually store your music at. It's like you wouldn't have the record industry if you didn't have records. You still have music, still have songs, but you didn't have records. And likewise, this was a very enabling technology because people were trying to push the utilization of these devices, but before you're still stuck with having discs and walking with disc-based Walkmans everywhere. And then the MP3 allowed to change that. And it was pretty much a long intentional research project. So the overall research of the MP3 took around 10 years, from early inceptions all the way to being ultra refined. And then it became pretty much the default file format for audio listening. You can argue even nowadays, which is very fascinating. This was also very good for the Fraunhofer Institute because this was their own proprietary technology. They were able to license it for different companies, and all the major companies that offer MP3 support, technically they're still paying royalties for Fraunhofer. So they made a good amount of money from Apple and Microsoft and Google. So pretty much, if you wanted to support this file format, you have to pay a small royalty licensing fee for every unit you have, and then that was very good. That is a very clear intentional case of, we start research in university and then realize we have an application for what we're building, and then we go all the way to the path of developing our full product and then licensing it to different stakeholders and commercializing. This is like a very good example of good transfer case from research and development activities, but that's not always the case. A great example from just industry and market experience is actually Netflix. And actually, I don't want to talk about the streaming Netflix. I want to talk about what Netflix was before it actually became a streaming company. So the founder of Netflix was he's still alive, is Reed Hastings. He's still the current CEO. And then his inception story is a mix of industry and market experience, because he was already working on the subscription business model before, but it was also a bit of personal frustrations because back in the 90s, you have to either watch a movie by television or go to somewhere to rent a tape. And that's what he did. So he went to this, it was a Blockbuster, and he wanted to rent one of the cassette tapes. Specifically, he wanted to watch Apollo 13. And then he delayed his cassette tape to return. And once he went there to give it back, he got a $40 surcharge. So because he delayed the return of his of the cassette tape, he had to pay over this fee. And then that made him really frustrated. And then somehow afterwards, he went straight to the gym. And then at the gym, he realized that, oh, I come to this gym and I pay my monthly $15 a month, and then if I don't show up, nothing changes. I can come here and I can use the machines, and that is all fine. And there's no issues if I'm delayed or if I don't show up, they're not going to surcharge me. And then he realized it actually would be a good idea to, instead of having to go get the tape, and if you don't return a specific time, you have to pay the surcharge. He realized that I can just make my own business, that you can order my DVDs. And then as long as I have one DVD, you can use it for as much as you want. And then if you want to get another one, you return it to me, we take it that, and then we give you a new one. And then as long as you keep paying the monthly fee for having that service of the month, it's all fine. You pretty much, the idea was I'm gonna make a gym subscription out of just renting DVDs through the mail. And that's how he actually started Netflix. The idea, the original business model of Netflix was you sign into our service and you can select the wide categories of DVDs, and we're literally gonna ship the DVD to your home, and then you can watch it. You can keep it as long as you want, as long as you're still paying us. And then if you want to get another movie, just ship the DVD back. We say, yeah, we got it, thank you. Here you go. You can pick any other one. And afterwards, you realize streaming was much more efficient. But yeah, for the beginning, it was just like I want to get a DVD by mail. For us in 25, I think sounds, at least for me, sounds a bit funny. And then, okay, moving to the next example would be of Beyond Meat, which is an example of societal and global challenges. So the inception story behind Beyond Meat was actually made by a guy that he was not interested in food engineering whatsoever. He was actually a vegetarian that was just a bit frustrated that the vegetarian burgers were really bad. And also, he used to work in the energy sector. So he was an energy consultant. And then one of the big issues that he figured out is that the world is growing a lot and our energy consumption is also growing a lot. And we're not going to be able to attend the demand for all the energy that we required. And then he also realized that the energy expenditure for actually producing meat is it's a very high, it's very demanding, because first you need to have your crops so you can produce feed, and then use the feed to feed the animals, and the animals need to grow and they drink water, and especially cows, they produce a lot of methane, and it's a very energy inefficient process just so you can have a steak. And then he realized, look, it would be super good if I can just cut the steak part. So the cow part, at least he still wanted to have the steak, but he was like, I want to have a vegetarian steak. And then he realized that if you just find a way to make a steak like substitute, he would greatly benefit from what he's actually wanted to achieve. And that was the whole idea behind Beyond Burger. In essence, was we're gonna make a vegetarian burger that tastes good, but also because deep down I am very concerned with the energy expenditure in the current time that we're living. And then I guess also vegans really like it. So that's like it's a funny parallel of it's a good demonstration of a societal and upcoming challenge, like this energy challenge that he saw, and then he realized, oh, I can actually work on something like this. For personal frustrations, I think Reed Hastings and the Beyond Burger guy were a bit frustrated, but I think a prime example would be actually the creation of Dropbox. So Dropbox was developed by this Stanford PhD student, and in 2007, and he was actually waiting in a bus stop for his bus to arrive, and he wanted to do some coding, but then he forgot that the code project which he was working on, he forgot to put on his USB stick. And then he was really frustrated. He was like, this is so dumb. I don't understand. I wish I could just have a thing that like a computer that is always on, that I can always access over the internet. And that's exactly what he did. So once he got back home, he got an old computer and said, okay, I'm gonna plug this computer to a specific internet address, and then it's gonna set a password. And now pretty much I can always access the contents of this computer online. And then he pretty much made a server. Like a server is just someone else's computer. And then he realized by sharing with his colleagues, people were like, oh, that's actually a very good idea. So you just have somewhere that you can go and drop your files, and you can always access them. This was back when the maximum storage limit for a free Hotmail account was 25 megabytes. So if you have 3 PowerPoint presentations, your storage is full. So the strategy of I'm gonna email myself my own files wasn't working anymore. He realized that people are actually interested in this idea of Dropboxing, and have this location you can drop your files, and they're always there, you can access from anywhere we have internet connection. And then that's actually where the idea came from. One of the best stories about this, at least in my opinion, is that in the same year he tried to pitch this technology for Apple, and then it was actually reviewed by Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs, he denied that. He said that Dropbox is a feature, it's not a full product, that we don't want to have it, thank you. And then 4 years later, um, everyone from the industry, from Google with Google Drive, from Microsoft to OneDrive, back then it was called SkyDrive, and also Apple with iCloud, they were all trying to replicate what Dropbox did. So once again, an example of technology that came out of some frustration you had. And then finally, an accidental discovery that is great is the story behind the Post-it notes. So Post-it notes pretty much it was developed by the M3 company. They are a company that produces different sorts of equipments and materials. And in the 50s, they were trying to develop this new super powerful glue that was supposed to be applied to arrows for different rockets and the airplanes. They wanted to replace the reuding process with an actual massive, very efficient glue that can just glue metal together. And then they come up with something that is quite the opposite. They come up with this very non-sticky, very easily removable sort of glue, and no one knew exactly what to do with that. The company within the actual engineering shared with the whole company, and they were like, guys, this is the new product that we have. Can we find an application for this? No one can figure it out. This thing was years and years there. It went to the fridge. No one knew what to do with that. And then 5 years later, a completely other engineer for a different department, he was actually also a member of his local church choir. So he was one of the singing guys. And then one of his practices for the choir, he had to switch between different songs in his songbook quickly and in a very fast pace. And then he was doing a lot of these kind of paper markings for mark where the page that he should switch is. And then he was always annoyed that the paper markers, they keep falling into the floor. And then at some point he realized, oh, actually, I think I want to see if I can stick the glue that the guy made with the sheets of my songbook, because then it's just much easier for me to move between them. And that's exactly what he did. And then he realized, oh, this is great, because now I can post these things here in the pages, and then because the glue is not very effective, I can easily remove the note from the page without ripping the page off. And that was actually the first application of the post-it note. So it was a complete accidental discoveries, and then it just worked super well. And the core idea that I want to convey in this session is that good ideas can come from many different locations. It's not just intentionally looking for something. Sometimes it's often, to be honest, a combination of different aspects. It's often a combination of research and development, but also with a frustration that you have, but also sometimes just asking to discover something. I think it's very important to be mindful of where the ideas come from. So, you can always be insightful of, oh, maybe there's a good opportunity here, maybe there's a good opportunity there, and you can tackle this potential. That's good for session part 1. Now I'm going to briefly talk on session part 2, so identifying transfer objects. The idea behind the transfer object is pretty much what you can utilize from the activities that you're concerning. Normally, you have 3 main categorizations for the objects that generate value, and then you also have an additional categorization just for the protection of the value that are created. So normally you have knowledge-based assets, which are assets based not technically on tangible objects, but know-how and knowledge and how to specifically do things. You would have physical and tangible assets, so actual physical things you can touch. And then you have human capital, which is often related to the capacity of the institution, other people that work in there. And finally, we have the value protection, which is the different ways that you can protect the things that you created. So to begin with, talking about the knowledge-based assets, just for example, the idea behind a knowledge-based asset is you have a specific knowledge type that you want to further commercialize, further utilize, not commercialize specific, but utilize for sure. And then, for example, you have things like algorithms and code. These are like non-tangible assets, but they're definitely some sort of knowledge-based asset. You have optimization algorithms. A great example of optimization algorithm is the SHA-256 encryption method, which is pretty much the default, the most used encryption method for high encryption requirements. You have different things like machine learning models. So it's a model that is been trained before and is able to perform specific predictions or come up with something. Now it's very popular because of the whole large language model things, and you can pretty much build different AI capabilities with that. And you also have, for example, combination of these different algorithms and codes, such as snippets or libraries. A good example is NumPy. NumPy is a specific library, just sort of extension made for the Python programming language, and pretty much gives a lot of capability for you to conduct mathematical analysis and perform different mathematical operations with a specific data set. This would be an example of knowledge base, but it's all condensed in a code format. Code itself, it's just a way of organizing information. It's not like a tangible thing that it can exist even though it exists, it only exists in your computer, but it's mostly how you can organize your content. Next, we have data and data sets. So pretty much you have large collections of different annotated data that you can specifically utilize for something else. Example of a curated data set would be the UK biobank. So it's like a massive biobank that collects genetic information of over 200,000 individuals. And this can be, it's like a very good transfer object that can be, this biobank is very important in a lot of different molecular and biomedical analysis. Have things like geospatial data. So pretty much you have different maps showing different types of data related to everything geospatial. So environmental data, demographic shifts or ecological sites, satellite data, imaging, and these things can be used on many different applications. You can have applications geared towards analyzing climate change, applications towards analyzing predicting agricultural yield, predicting energy utilization models by analyzing climate models. These are all types of very specific knowledge-based transfer object. And then you also have a lot of data sets such as genomic and proteomic data sets. So quite similar to the UK Biobank. An example here would be the Human Genome Project. So it's a complete data set that contains information about the human genes. And then you also have models and methodologies. So these can be simulation models, standard operating procedures, and evaluation frameworks. Simulations models are exactly what the name says. Let's say you have a specific model that can predict climate change, or you can predict a specific financial risk, or a model that simulates protein unfolding. These types of models. You have standard operation procedures. This is an umbrella term for different procedures that one can perform to conduct a specific procedure. This sounds very vague, but let's say you have a procedure of how to ship a product from one warehouse to the other. Then you need to retrieve the product and then log and then move to this location. Then this location is going to package the product. The product is going to do this. Then we're going to move to the transporting side. Transporting side is going to move to truck. Truck is going to move from A to B. B to B, you're going to receive, going to verify the package is there. You're going to verify if the package was damaged. Over and over and over. These are like traditional procedures that can exist, but these are often, very important things to have well-regulated, well-maintained operations. And then finally, you have different evaluation frameworks, which are pretty much methodological structures that can be used to assess or to demonstrate a specific something special. Henrietta mentioned previously the business model canvas, which is a specific type of framework. You also have the 4 to 5 forces, another specific type of framework, have SWOT analysis. So you have these different methodology-based objects that, even though they are not tangible, they can offer a lot of value, and you can actually profit off these. In particular, for example, the business model canvas is owned by this Swiss company called Strategizer. And then even though they don't copyright the model itself, which technically they could, they offer a lot of training courses and consultancy just on this area. So it's a transfer object that you can later build on additional things. Regarding actual physical portfolios, so physical assets, often you have also many different transfer objects. You have prototypes and designs, materials and compositions, and infrastructures, equipments. Going into prototypes and designs, you have functional prototypes. So your early minimal viable product. So it's either the first prototype or the first version of the product that meets the minimum specific requirements for generating value for your clients. You can also have things like industrial designs, which is it's more geared towards aesthetics, how a specific object looks like, and less more geared towards functionality. It would be something like the looks of, let's say, the looks of a new phone, or the looks of a new computer, the looks of a new car. Even though the features of the car are very similar, the car has 4 wheels, goes from A to B. You can have, just the specific design of it can really add value to the product itself. And then another type of prototypes and design physical asset would be engineering schematics. So let's say you have the blueprints of these schematics and how to produce a new device, how to assemble a new circuit board, how to connect together the different nodes of a specific silicon product, how to assemble a machine to conduct something very specific. These are considered physical assets. For materials and compositions, you have new material samples. A great example of this is the graphene. So graphene is a hyper durable, hyper flexible, great conductive carbon-based material. An example of a chemical, same way you can have new materials, you can have new chemical compounds, so you can have synthetic molecules. They're often used in drug production and new reagents or new substances that can later be used on different chemical processes. And then you also have biological materials. So this can be engineered cells or specific antibodies or vaccines, for example. A great example of this is the Henrietta cells. So the HeLa cells, which is pretty much like it works as a default template that you can use to experiment your new biosubstances on specific cells. So there's an example. And then you also have infrastructures and equipments, which I think they're very straightforward. You can have specialized equipments. They can go all the way from, custom microscopes, spectrometers, specific lasers, construction rigs, testing rigs, all the way to different scales of different products. You can have pilot plants or test beds. So, for example, you can have a assembly location or a test factory for a specific type of product you're trying to generate. Or you can have something even larger, such as a particle accelerator, for example. And you can also have biobanks, which is a more biological oriented type of pilot plant. So that would be a collection of biological samples of a collection of something biologically related. A great example would be here I mentioned the UK Biobank, but you can also talk about, for example, the seed vault in Svalbard, Norway, which is pretty much a massive biobank that contains, in theory, specimens of all the different seeds that exist. I mean, not all, but they're trying to achieve all the different seeds that exist in the planet, sort of a safe bank for genetic data in case something terrible happens, and then we need to have the data itself. That would be an example of infrastructure equipment. The third creation value transfer object would be your human capital, actually. So the people that are actually part of your organization. This is often also considered an intangible asset, but the idea behind it is that you have your individuals and your teams. So you have your tacit knowledge, your know how you can do things. These are often unwritten, only between exists knowledge that exists only between people on how to do specific things, how to have the best practices for the things you're working on, the best ways to achieve a specific outcome. And you also have things like domain authority. So be the deep expertise that makes your specific organization, specific person, very well renowned and known in its own field, which is also very beneficial. Next, you also have networks. So networks, they can be a group or a collection of specialists that work together in a specific area, and then they can provide different sort of benefits. An example of a network would be the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, and pretty much this is an expert consortium that come up with a specific standards and process for how most important technologies related to web transfer are going to exist. So this is the consortium that defines standards for the HTTP protocol, for HTML, for HTML, for HTTP protocol, for TCP protocols, and these are the protocols that the machines use to communicate between themselves. And then finally, you also have the reputation of your organization, which can be a valuable transfer object. So an example is the U.S. National Institute of Standards, and they are the U.S. National Institutes of Standards and Technology, which is important. And they are the U.S. organization that decides different standards to be used in specific things in related technology. So a specific case that they are actually the institution that defined the SHA 256 protocol to be the default encryption protocol that's used on different banks and different medical institutes for high maximum security in data privacy. They are the company that actually defines these standards. And then finally, you have the different ways that you can actually protect your the value that you created. So normally we categorize the ways that you can protect the things you generated between patents, copyrights, and trademarks and service marks, but you also have other forms. So patents, pretty much the idea is you go to a patent office, you can actually register the things that you develop. The idea behind it is that you are pretty much explaining for the public exactly what you did, how your innovation was created, and in return, you receive a specific time that only you have exclusive access to the patent. This time usually goes to the maximum of 20 years. That's the maximum in the US and the European Union. And often you can categorize patents in two major groups. You have utility patents, so the patents that actually describe exactly the utility of what you're doing and how it works. So pretty much you go and explain, hey, here's my technology, here's exactly how my technology works, we do this, and then we do this, and then do that. The whole process is defined there. And then you also have design patents, which are more oriented towards protecting the specific aesthetics of a specific product. Nowadays, it's quite convoluted. So for example, Apple has a design patent on how a smartphone should look like. Not only how their own specific Apple smartwatch watch all the smartwatch watches, but it's a big contentious topic within the patent world, but we're not going to go into that. Then we have copyrights. People often confuse patents, copyrights, and trademarks, but a patent is something you have to go to the office and actually register, and then if you are accepted, you have the exclusive right. Copyrights technically is a sort of protection for things that you actually create, like your intellectual property that you create. And the big difference between copyright and patent is that these things, the copyrights, they are already protected the moment you create something. So let's say you're writing a specific piece of software code. The moment you wrote it, technically, just by you writing it, you already have the copyright for that. No one can just go and copy your code. That would be copyright infringement. That's why licensing is a very important topic, and in code development, specifically when you're developing open source code. Even if you say, oh, my code is open source, you still have to specify exactly which type of license that you're using, because you have licenses that open copyright for other people to use. By default, you already have copyright. If you just find a piece of software online, technically, you don't have authorization to use it. It's still protected by copyright by whoever wrote it, either if that person is an individual or if it's an institution. And same applies for example, written works. So the moment J.K. Rowling decided to write Harry Potter, that's already by default her story. It's copyright protected. If someone tries to copy, technically she's allowed to sue that. It also works for Harry Potter, but also works for textbooks, for research papers, for different types of training manuals. Generally, the idea is the moment if you wrote it, if you're the author, you have copyright over it. Of course, that changes, for example, if you're working under the umbrella of organization, but normally there's somewhere in your contract that you write for your company that you work for, there's this clause of transfer of copyright. So if you produce something on the organization, it belongs to the organization, not you. That's not always the case, depending on the organization. And same also applies for audiovisual works. So you have a video recording, such as this, for example, or you made some writing notes. The general rule of thumb is if you did it, it kind of belongs to you by default. That's your copyright, and no one else should infringe unless you give specific permission. And then the third point would be just trademarks and service marks. So the idea behind the trademark would be you want to kind of have your own specific name that only you can use. And the idea behind it is that you want to protect the visibility of a specific tool. So let's say you have a brand name such as TensorFlow. A TensorFlow is a specific library for doing machine learning. It's developed by Google. This name is a registered name. So only Google is allowed to use this name, TensorFlow. You have names such as ChatGPT, for example. It's also like a brand name. These names are registered. Only the trademark owners are able to use them. And if you use without proper authorization, you might be infringing on their trademarks. And then finally, you can also trademark logos, which are a kind of visual presentation of the name that you have. So for example, the Nike whoosh logo, that's as a trademark, it belongs to the Nike Corporation. And if you use it in foul, if you foul use it or use without authorization or with no good faith, and you also might be legally sued by Nike Corporation. And finally, you also have other forms of IP. So not everything you're trying to protect needs to be very hard coded, IP coded. You also have different strategies that don't necessarily include going to an office or using legal methods. The most common one is just trade secret. So you just don't say how you do things to other people. Keep that a secret. That's important. Often, if you're doing something first, you don't know exactly how to do it, and then you try a lot of things fail, then you can figure out how to do it, and you don't have to share that information with someone else. So just keep a secret. It sounds kind of obvious, but not always. Another point is that specifically for the European Union, we have very specific rights related to database building. So not specifically the content of the database, but the actual fact that you had all the energy and effort spent to build a data set, to collect data from different points, to do all different analysis, even if you do that with data that is open source. So even though the data itself, let's say you have a collection of, you get an open source weather update database, and then you start doing a lot of inferences of correlation between polling in the air and the weather or something like that. Even though the data sets for the weather and the data sets for the polling in the air are open source, the moment you combine them together and you kind of build something unique, you have a specific right over the data set. It's like a very specific type of protection that only exists in Europe. This protection doesn't exist in the US and the rest of the world, but since we're here, I think it's important to know this. And then you also have the plant varieties right, which is not going to go too much into it, but it's a very specific type of protection just for when you produce new genetic variations of a specific plant. And yeah, pretty much that is the collection of the 3 different types. The upcoming session, I think I would likely want to split for the afterwards session because it's actually quite a lengthy process. And since technically I should have 3 continuous hours of talking, I'm quite flexible in how I can organize the content. I would now like to make a short break. So I'm going to move back to the audience. And then I would like to know if anyone has any specific points or questions on this thing. I think it should be not. Okay, because so technically I'm checking the agenda super quick, and then I noticed that technically this was supposed to be, it was like a 45-minute presentation, and everything else just starts at the I still have content. We're still like 11 o'clock, so we still have 1 extra hour. And the rest of my content is for the evening session. So what I would propose is I can start talking about the content that I would talk on my next session in this 1 additional extra hour. And then we have 1 extra less session during the evening, so we can kind of skip up. So we can kind of finish the evening session 1 hour earlier. So I think that just makes a lot of sense. So if anyone has anything against that, now's a good time to say, but I think most people would agree that it's also like better, so we can also leave earlier later on. That's what I would do. But I think I've been talking for 2 hours straight, so I think I do need I think it was super nice to have a break for everyone. So I have here, I'm going to stop my presentation now, and I'm going to open my break presentation because I would like to introduce a small, short 10-minute break. Also, I really have to go to the bathroom. I drink the whole water bottle, so it's very important for me. So now what I'm gonna do is 1 second, go here to my, I have many screens I have to share. I'm gonna share the short break 10-minute slide here that everybody can see. Okay, and I'd say that we do a short 10 minutes break now. Now is 11:05, so we should return at, I will return at 11:15, okay? So that's what I would say. Thanks everybody for following. I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. Okay, very nice. It's been 10 minutes. That was a very good pause for me. Great. Now that we have some extra, yeah, I'll have an extra 45 minutes, and I plan to do my presentation in 45 minutes. For the second block, I'm gonna be moving to the next presentation that I have, the technology transfer services. So let me just quickly share my screen for 1 second here, and then I can share. You're not a presenter now. Okay, very good. So now that I spent the last session talk about where ideas can actually come from exhaustively, and also the different ways that institutions or people related to universities and research development can actually create value, I'm going to actually talk about something quite practical, which is how you can actually assess the potential of all these transfer objects that you have that you identified. So ideally, you're in your institution, you're an organization, and then now you realize, oh yeah, there's actually a lot of things that people can do, from writing code to writing papers to writing manuals to figure out a way to do new things, all the way to a new design, a new product. Now you're like, okay, great. Now that I know about this, how I actually know like how these what are these things are good, how they're not good, how can I actually measure, what I can actually do with the things that I have in the different transfer objects that I have in my organization. And then we often do this exercise, this session very by providing just an example, because it just makes it much easier to follow instead of just having an abstraction. And the example that we do is you have a group of scientists and they develop a new motion feedback system. So this motion feedback system is some sort of device you put onto your shoe, and then it follows how long you walk, and then you can track how many steps you do and if you're stepping properly and whatnot. It's just an abstract example, but it just helps to follow along. Ideally, you would like to visualize the four there's like four core elements for getting a transfer object to be transferred to society or to a business successfully. First, you want to take a look into the what are the potential transfer use cases that I have for technology that I have, what can I actually do with it. Then you want to fall into the actual application. Now that I know the use case, I can see where's the best location that can actually apply the technology that I'm working on. Then you move into the project development part of, okay, now I know what I have, I know what I want to do. How can I actually organize the my resources and my human capital around actually creating a project that leads for me to commercialize this. And then afterwards, in this case, we're talking market entry, but it's not necessarily always market entry. You can have just normal transfer to society. I'll talk more about this in the upcoming session about the different innovation pathways that you have to transfer. You don't necessarily need to build a new product or something that can make you money, but for this case, it's more practical. People really get the whole idea of like, I build something, people pay me for it, money gets happy. Okay, so talking about the use cases, the idea of you have use cases like you need to figure out where can I actually use the technology that this product that I just developed, where it would be like a good application area for have this. What is the industry field that I'm working on? So the idea behind it is you need to ask yourself like some core good questions, like what is the expertise and know-how from or behind the research? So what type of information can I get from the people they actually build this? And then they're usually a good source of feedback. Usually the people that develop technology is the best ones that know about the technology that they themselves they build. And then you can go into what are the potential kinds of products, services, or solutions to be offered based on this exactly sort of technology that I have. Use cases would be ask yourself these questions of what can be done with the solution or the knowledge that I have, and what are the things that make my solution to be special or even unique. The thing about being special and unique is not necessarily something that you need to have. Maybe sometimes you just have like a better way of doing something, or like a cheaper way of doing something, or a simpler way of doing something. They don't need to be ultra special, super unique. You don't need to figure out the massive, novel, revolutionary way. Sometimes it's just a small optimization to processes. There are different ways that you can add value to the thing that you actually have. I think a great example of this is this software tool called Cursor. It's a tool that is very commonly known between developers. And pretty much what Cursor is, so usually when you write a code, you have this thing called integrated development environment, which is kind of like the code editor. So if you write documents in Word, you write code in these things called the code editors. And then once large language models, ChatGPT came out, people were often copying and pasting what they're working on into ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, I have a bug here. Can you help me solve it? What should I do with this? And then the people behind Cursor, they just realized, oh, it was super nice that instead of you having to switch from your code environment to Chrome or to your web browser, you just have like a box on the side and you can ask these questions and it's like a shortcut. And that is literally the whole value proposition is, look, we save you an alt tab. And now last time I checked, this company's worth 9 billion US dollars. So I think they're doing quite well. They have their yearly revenues over 100 million US dollars just by people paying to have this feature. They're like, oh, now the system can like read, and now it's more advanced, like this your code can see the files that you have. But pretty much it was like, look, this is a shortcut for going to Chrome and asking ChatGPT what you want to do. And like it's not something super special, it's not something super unique, but just incremental changes that can have a massive impact down the line. So that's the core idea. Like step one, you want to define like what are the case uses that I have for the technology that I'm working on. Like where can this actually go through? And then you move into, okay, now that I more or less know what my technology can do. So in the case of the motion sensor, it's very clear. It's a motion sensor that tracks where you go, how far you go, blah, blah, blah. You start thinking about the application. So, all right, where can I actually, like, what are the areas that my research or the thing that I'm working on can be applied to? Which are the most interesting use cases for technology that I'm developing? How can I transfer this into a new product or a new service or a new startup? You can make all these questions within your own institution to figure out, okay, what is the best paths that I can have to, what are the best areas that I can have to apply the technology that I'm working on? So going back to the example of the motion feedback systems, you can kind of figure out, okay, what are my good use cases that I have for this technology? Some are intuitive, others are not very intuitive. So the idea of like, oh, we have the metric system that can improve the movements. So you can track movements and you can see if you're doing it properly or not. And then you can, system can give you general recommendations. Or we have this facilitating coaching, for example. So you can connect this system to a platform that experts or physical coaches have access to, and they can say, "Oh, I've been tracking your performance, and I can see that you need to improve this, and you should do that, and you should do this." You can use it, for example, as a testing benchmark for the manufacturer of new products good. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to sell this to the end consumer, maybe I can sell to a different industry or a different service provider that actually produces the service good. So let's say a new company is developing new types of running sneakers, and they want to test how good they are in different conditions. Then I can say, hey, use my system, and you can use this to analyze the running of your different athletes and how different things works, how the pressure is distributed in their sole feeds. And then, based on this, you can improve and think about how you're going to better build your products. You can also use this to increase the sports experience. So let's say you have the power ultra athletes, and they're like, I want to know exactly the best things. I want to know exactly how my performance is. I want to know exactly how many miles I can run per calorie or something like that. And then these people, they are often willing to give you, they're willing to be very interested in this kind of very metric oriented types of instruments. There's this company called Garmin. You probably heard of it. They do a lot of different tracking equipment for cyclists, and then they do some very, very, very ultra, very specific type of tools that I don't think any normal person would be interested at. But the ultra athletes, the people that are really into their running or their cycling or their canoeing, they love it, and they just pay top dollar just to have these kind of marginal additional advancements. So the idea is pretty much you think about use cases, and then you see where are the areas that I can actually apply this. Oh, my technology can be applied to an industrial area. You can apply to the healthcare. You can apply to different parts of society. You can apply to different sports areas, and so on and so on and so on. And then based on this, it's quite important because actually start to get like a good idea of where you want to put your efforts into. So often we recommend to actually target like the main segments that you want to use your technology for instead of just trying to do everything all at once. It's not a good use of your limited time, your limited resources, and you end up coming, instead of having a very good solution for a very specific area that people are very interested, you end up having a lot of semi relevant solutions in many different areas, but at the end, no one's interested in that. So usually recommend to identify not only the application areas, but the key application areas, so you can have a very good idea of where you want to go with technology you're working on. So for example, here you can see like the again a potential like a path tree of the different domains that based on your motion feedback sensor you can go for. So let's say you want to follow the society path. You can see, oh yeah, society path, this can be used for different fitness activities. This can be used to facilitate coaching on different sports exercises. If you want to go to more the production industrial part of things, you can see, oh, maybe I can transfer my transfer object to the producers of consumer goods, so producers of sneakers and for biking sneakers and things fit related. Then they can use this to transfer once again the technology to the a pure company, successor company. So you sell your technology to a company that just makes very specialized shoes, and then this specialized shoe companies say, hey, we don't need to have our own brand, we can just have partners. They can put their own branding to our equipment, and then we can they can transfer the technology itself. It goes all the way to sportswear, and then you facilitated the product development part. Let's say you want to go into the healthcare part of things. So, oh yeah, maybe we can use the system to track the health of elderly people they're walking, or use it to support people they're rehabilitating that had some sort of physical injury that didn't allow them to walk. Now they have to relearn again how to walk. There's different applications that can say, oh, maybe there's a potential use case here for the feedback system of I'm going to apply this to healthcare. Can apply this for all the way from diagnostics, prevention to rehabilitation to different areas. Or you can just say, I think I'm just going to build my own product here, so I'm going to go straight into the business application for sports segmentation. I want to build now this new shoes, new equipment for professional sports athletes, or just for leisure athletes. And then you start segmenting on and on. The core idea here is that based on a specific application, there's many different paths, and then often your task as the transfer manager to figure out, okay, what are the best paths, what are the best opportunities, what are the best commercialization pathways that I have based on the technology that I'm working on. And then once you have a good grasp with this, you start doing your own assessment. So often we really recommend people to just put everything on a sort of dashboard that allows for not only for you to easily visualize everything that you're working on, but also to easily compare between different segments. So normally you have first your major categorizations. On this specific example, we have sports consumer products, sports consumer services, and then we have health and well-being. And then we start segmenting to, you have the different applications. So we have for sports consumer products, we have sportswear applications and sports goods. For consumer services, we have leisure and recreation. We have organized sports or professional sports. And then for health and well-being, we have rehabilitation. And then when we first start providing a small description of, for leisure and recreation, we want to have a VR-based system for golf courses. I think this original case was a VR headset instead of a movement tracker. Intern forgot to change this slide. But so the core idea is, okay, you want to start having the description so you can know exactly what you're talking about. And then you move on to your market orientation phase. And that is something that we really emphasize. It's very important to have at least some sort of, especially if you're trying to build a product or service, some sort of market orientation and strategy, because lack of market orientation is often, it's something that we see a lot in the different courses, different projects that work. It's often the major number one reason why a lot of these initiatives fails, because people, they come up with technology and they think, oh yes, I built something and I think it's great, and I think just the fact that I have it, people are just going to come to me and they're going to say, hey, I want to have the thing that you have. And often when you go and you ask them, okay, where can I apply the things that you have, they cannot come up with any sort of answer or any sort of satisfactory answer. I don't know. For me, always kind of sound obvious. Like if you have, if you want to, ideally, if you have something you want to solve a problem to be able to transfer this sort of thing, otherwise don't generate value. But often, like specifically academia, that people, they're like, I want to do research first because I enjoy doing research. They end up coming up with things that they think, oh yeah, this is great, this is amazing. I came up with this new method for doing something, or this new production, or this new material, and then whoopsie. And then I'm sure people are gonna really enjoy this. And then they come to us and say, okay, but we don't know exactly what to do with this. Figure out the market for us. That is a big core part of what we do here at Suneo, is just figuring out, getting technology, analyzing, and figuring out, okay, where we can actually apply this. And unfortunately, often the case is that for a lot of these things. There's just no market for that. They found a new solution, but the solution is just not good. It's just not better. There's other ways, there's cheaper ways, or there's more efficient ways, or the market is not enough to justify all the investment you're supposed to have. And it sounds tragic, but it's often a very good thing to know early on, because then you avoid all the hassle of going through all the way to develop technology that later on you're not going to be able to properly commercialize. So I think that's like a very important thing to identify. Exactly, look, especially if you're trying to commercialize a product or a service, market orientation is often a very important thing, because the reason why these types of activities end up failing. And then continuing on, we have three main kind of strategies that we use to actually assess the success or the potential success of different market orientation activities. So usually we have product free solution is the most common one that we recommend. So you want to have a problem and you offer the solution to a problem, and this can be things such as, there's a job that needs to be done, or there's a problem, how are you going to fix this? Then you also have the different type of assessment, market potential. I will not talk too much about market potential because it was already covered by a previous colleague of mine on training number 4. So I will just briefly go through it. And then finally, you have the final thing, which is risk assessment. So once you're comfortable with your problem solution fit, and you're also comfortable with the market potential, you go to risk assessment. That is, okay, if you're doing unless you're doing something highly innovative and the only person doing it, which is very unlikely to be the case, you're very likely going to have competitors. Not only to have a product and solution, you also often needs to be the best solution, because consumers, they're often they're price sensitive, or they're like application sensitive. So they want to look for the best option. They want to look for the option that costs less money, or is faster, or is more reliable, or it can produce deliver at a certain volume. These things are very important for on the consumer side. So beginning with the idea of like, okay, the problem solution. First, you want to populate the dashboard that you're building with these new criteria. So now we have the product solution fit, you have the market potential, we have the risk assessment, and based on it, you start working on. So first, we're going to start on the product fit solution approach, and then pretty much you have to figure out, okay, how does the thing that I'm building makes something better? Ideally, you want to improve on what we call the state of the art. So state of the art is like the umbrella term for the latest technology on a specific area, the latest groundbreaking technologies on a specific segment. And then ideally, let's say you come up with something that it's better than that it's able to expand the state of the art, have better functionality. That's what we call the improvement of the state of the art. That's often a very good indicator that you're working in a good direction. That's a good thing to have. Going back to the problem fit solution, you have a problem, you try to validate, the solution that I have actually solves this problem that I think I want to do. And then if you do this properly, the transition to the product market fit should be a very seamless thing to do. So you found your right solution to the problem, and now you're going to move up and apply your solution to fix this problem, and the market should be receptive of that. Ideally, yeah, a good reflection that would normally suggest is, you would ask yourself, okay, who's my customer? Who's benefiting from the solution that I'm actually working on? And then would they actually be able to pay, and willing to pay? Would it make sense for them to pay for a thing that I'm offering? It's also important to realize that just because you have a solution for a problem doesn't mean that people necessarily going to pay for that, either because the price is just not right, it's too much, or they just don't bother, or there's another solution that is just better. It's a good point to kind of reflect and think about, okay, who will pay for my solution, or pay for my offering, who will be willing to pay for this kind of thing that I'm working on. And then going back to the example of the feedback sensor, you kind of go back and say, okay, let's say if I'm interested in going to different sports retailers, who should I talk to? And then usually you kind of make your list of most relevant stakeholders, and then normally people do this by just doing a quick Google search, or just having general knowledge, and then you start figuring out, okay, this is the potential partner 1, a Decathlon, potential partner 2 is JD Group, potential partner 3, potential partner 4. You start making up your own list, and then usually that's very positive, because it starts giving you like a lot of clues of like how good or not your market potentially is. If your list ends up being very short, that's usually a bad indicator. Ideally, you want to have, there's a lot of different groups that I can go to, and they're potentially be interested in the things that I'm working on. That's often a good indicator. And then ideally, you want to do this for every single one of the kind of different groups that you're interested at. So you do this for the sport retailers. Let's say you're interested in the competitive sports or competitive leagues. You might want to go to public and private golf centers. Let's say you're interested in the bikers clubs, so you go to specific groups just for cycling, runners clubs, these sort of different things. If you're into rehabilitation clinics, you maybe compile this stuff in university hospitals or healthcare research centers that might be interested in doing this, and so on and so on and so on. And then ideally, you also want to validate how good the application that you have actually fits the value proposition that you're trying to offer to these different partners. So ideally, you want to have this kind of 10-point validation table to see, okay, here's the technology that I have. On the, as you can see on the rows, you have the different features. So you have immersiveness, adaptability, uh, different criteria. Every criteria is different. And then on the rows, you're gonna have the different. On the columns, you're gonna have the different points and see. Oh, is this a pain point? Is the thing that I'm trying to solve? Is it like an actual big pain point for this part, or is it just like, oh, it's a nice thing to have, but it's not necessarily a must-have? Or maybe it's just like, oh, this is not a problem at all that we have. That is a good way to validate your own assumption instead of saying, yes, I'm sure people from a specific area, from golf courses are gonna love to have this tracking sensor. Um, Ideally, you want to validate your assumptions and really think about it. If you want to go even further, we spoke a lot about this on the previous training session that we had on session 3 and session 4 on the core workshops, is that there's different ways for you to collect information to validate this. So my colleague Siva, she had a whole workshop exactly on conducting primary and secondary interviews. So how you're able to, for each one of these assumptions, how to properly collect data, how to reach out to experts, how to the best way to communicate with them, how's the best way to get information out of these people, how to the actual nitty-gritty detail parts of these things. So I'm not gonna go into this because it's already been done. But yeah, it's important for you to validate most of your assumptions. And once you have a good idea, more or less, you start once again going back and populate your the table that you're working on with your assumptions. So here's the problem solution fit, and then you see, oh yes, the solution that I have, it's great for sports wears. Maybe it's not that good for organized sports, and so on and so on and so on. And then you move to the next part, which is, okay, your next assessment type. So market potential. Like I mentioned again, we cover a lot of the identifying your market potential on the core training 4, but just to go super quick over it, the idea is you're able to get a lot of primarily secondary information data about the specific markets and the different segments that you're working on. And based on this, you're able to derive some information of, is it a growing market? Is it a shrinking market? What is the total market size? Or how is the market segmented out of this market? What are the different consumer groups that I might be more interested at the solution that I want to apply? These are different different scenarios, different areas that you can consider and reflect on. And then once you end up doing this, you have a very good idea of like, oh yes, there's a market potential for this. Oh, this area here is very troublesome because you don't have a lot of market potential. There's very limited people to sell to. Oh, this market here is growing because of this and this reasons. That's something you would ideally, you would definitely want to do. And then once again, you go and you, okay, now I'm gonna once again populate. Now that I have another criteria to validate my assumptions, you populate again your dashboard. So now you have the product free solution assessment, and you also have your market potential assessment. Then you can start seeing, okay, sportswear is a good combination. The market's very good for sports good. The market's just okay for everything else, and so on and so on and so on. And then finally, a very important assessment, specifically when we're trying to, this is very specifically important for either licensing, product development, specifically for startups, is you do the risk assessment. So there are different things that you can check to make sure that your data is actually good. So you want to check the time to market, how long it would take for you from the early development phase of what you're working on all the way for you to be able to deliver this to your customers. And how this is going to actually impact you. Like, is the technology going to move on once I'm there already? Is something better going to come up after once I'm done with the time to market? Are my customers going to, my potential customers, are they going to lose interest? Maybe I'm working on like a kind of trendy on technology, but maybe by the time my product is complete, the interest for the market already changed for something else. Maybe the trend is already in decline. Time to market is quite a relevant fact, just because not only you need to be there on the right time, you need to have the right product. You also need to be at the right time. A great example of the time to market is actually Apple's Newton. It's a classic example. So Apple's Newton is I called the first iPad. So it was pretty much an iPad that was developed it was this at the time. Apple was calling it the PDA, personal device assistant. And then the idea was that it was pretty much, you have the pen, you have the tablet, you have very bad touchscreen. It's like, oh, this is going to replace your own computer. And it was a complete failure, the Newton, because it was just the absolute wrong time. Technology was not there. Consumers, they were not familiarized with touch screens back then. You didn't have the whole application ecosystems. You didn't have good, actually, I don't even have like proper touch touch devices for human touch that you just have for pen. So the usability was very poor. Battery life was terrible. So you can only use for 1 or 2 hours the maximum. It was a complete absolute failure. Almost led Apple to be bankrupt because they put a lot of time and effort into that. And then 1 decade later, in 2007, they announced the iPad, and it was a complete, at least for them, it was a complete revolutionary device because it was the correct combination of everything. So users were more comfortable using touchscreens. They knew about, oh, I can swipe and I can zoom and I can pitch and all these different things. Very obvious for us, but back then it wasn't. The device is sleek. It has a good battery life. It has a good application ecosystem. It can actually do a lot of things outside. Just back then, you just had emailing, and that was kind of it. You can write notes. You didn't have all the. Now you have the fancy weather app and the fancy YouTube app. All these things. It was just the right time. So often, this time to market and also like the whole understanding the time of the market itself is very important. You also want to take into consideration things like the access to the relevant customers. So I'm not going to be able to produce what I want in a specific volume in a way that I can actually transport and access the relevant customers in a way that is sustainable for us. Maybe some customers are like, oh yeah, this technology is great, but we can't just have 2 or 3 products. We need to have a specific scale you cannot offer. Some customers, maybe they are in a different region, and then you didn't check the regulatory requirements for technology for their specific region. This is often the case with when you're working with the biomedical industry, a lot of sanitary requirements of bringing biosamples from one place to the other. If you're working with food products, it gets even more harsh, you get even more complicated. So all these things you need to take into account of the product that I have. Are my customers going to be able to properly commercialize this in their regions or not? You also want to think about the barriers for the adoption of your innovation. So are the people actually going to be receptive? You can do like a callback to the first example of the Apple Newton in 94. People were just, it was even too early for laptops. People were just not into the adoption. Although this new technology is not going to work. That if you don't need a keyboard, you can just use everything with a pen. It was just not going to work. And then you really have to figure it out, like if people are more receptive to that or not. Otherwise, you might have a failed product that's just not going to be able to successfully transfer into the market. We also want to check into the competitive landscape, which is also very important. Like, am I the only person doing this? If someone else is doing this, how does my innovation compare to the innovation that these other partners are developing? And if that's going to be good or bad for my business. So that's ideally you want to have some sort of matrix of the potential risks. So you get all the risks, think of all your fears and concerns of how my business can go bad, and you start mapping them. And ideally, you want to say you have high impact critical risks that completely blow up and destroy your business. And then you have low risk that, oh, yes, that could be a problem, but it's not going to be a total catastrophic product. Let's say our product gets delayed by a month instead of 2. A month or so, it's a risk, but it's not a very a massive risk. It's not going to completely destroy my business. But let's say something else happens, a new competitor comes out with something groundbreaking technology or something much nicer, and everybody pays attention to that. That can be very catastrophic. And then ideally, you have your matrix. You start writing down all the potential risks that you might have, and then you start plotting them here and here and here and here, and then you more or less see how things are gonna turn out. So in the example here, you have high risk of a competition, like other competitors show up with better products. That's a high risk because they have something better than you do. A low risk would be acceptance. So maybe you're very confident that people are gonna be completely okay with the type of thing that I'm working on, the system that can harvest data of how they walk, which nowadays people are completely fine with that. We have Apple Watches and everything, but I think if you go back 20 years, people find very creepy the idea of like you have this device that tracks everywhere that you go and knows how much you're walking, all these things. it's fascinating how people change over time. And you also want to plot different risks of, oh, what's my time to market? Is it going to be like a good time to market? Is everything going to work out well? And then once you've done this, you more or less can have a good assessment of like, oh, maybe I should go to this specific market instead of that specific market because of different risks. And once you compile all the information that you have into your dashboard, it allows you to much better make your decision. So you check, okay, here's my product, here's your product solution fit, here's the market potential, here are my risks. And based on this, you can say, oh, yes, the sportswear looks like the most optimal area that I have to apply my application to, because uh, all the checks are pointing you have very good prognosis there. You can also review your things you should avoid, for example. So if you look at the organized sports category, it doesn't seem to be the best one comparing across the different axes. And that is just, it's overall a very good way of actually finding the proper area that you should prioritize the further transfer activities you're working on a specific technology. That's what we definitely recommend. We do this training a lot for other technology transfer officers. So we have specific universities that they come to us and say, look, we have these problems that have all these different technologies, all these different patents, and we want to commercialize this, but we have no idea to figure out which ones are good, which ones are bad. That is the whole thing that we should go look at. Figure out the applications, figure out the market you want to go to, figure out how the solution fits well, and the risks you're association with that. And then after that, you have a much better way of understanding where you should go. And also, this also not only works within one technology itself, but you can also use this to compare different potential technologies. So often the case, we have partners that they have way more patents or way more innovative production that they have people in the transfer offices. So they have to figure out, okay, how we're going to prioritize the different applications you're going to spend time with. That is what I recommend. Also breaking down to the potential applicability. And then once you do that, you start to have a very good grasp of what goes well with what. And that's pretty much it for this session. Thanks so much for your time. I will now stop sharing my screen, and I would like to know if anyone has any input or feedback or questions regarding the session. I guess you guys enjoyed it, but we're getting
or maybe a remark.
Yes.
Not a question at all, but I would like to thank you for the presentation. It was very excited, and it was like one of those presentations that makes you think about the business and how things are going. So from this point, it's very inspiring.
Oh, it's great. Oh, thank you, Mahaka. Thanks. I really appreciate your feedback. Very nice. Thanks a lot. Great. Very nice. Okay, I see that now we're getting to it's getting close to 12, so that's when people start getting hungry. Usually I don't like to hold people a lot around lunch, because then it doesn't work. They just start disappearing and they don't come back. So I would say we're quite good in the time. 10 minutes. Yes, of course, my dear.
Just probably a comment. It would be probably good if I made a presentation. I've got it for like 15 minutes, not very long one.
Okay.
So that we could probably close it in the morning time. And
my only issue
well,
is that
it depends. It's up to you.
I still
It's
have
like
another. No, I think that's a great idea. But the problem is, I still have another presentation.
Okay.
Technically, I have
Oh,
three
okay.
blocks.
Then it's okay.
I condense a little bit. During the break, I shift some things here and there to make it more compact, so I can cover a lot of the material from one of the previous sessions into here already. So, but I still have another hour of content. Okay. So I'm sorry. Otherwise, it would be great. Yeah, otherwise it would be great than to just have a 15-minute session. But yeah. But thanks for the suggestion. I appreciate it. Okay, so right now, yeah, we're 10 minutes earlier, but I think it's completely fine. I'd say we can go for the lunch break. I would still like to resume at 1 o'clock. I think it's just the time that everybody's on at. And then at 1 o'clock, we have my final session on the best practices on innovation transfer. And then after that, Maria can have a presentation, and then we're good. So that's pretty much it for now. Thanks everybody for showing up. And yeah, have a great lunch.